Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Bird Files podcast. Today, I'm here with Texas A&M University's senior yell leader, Thomas Grieve. He has been on a very busy schedule, so I'm lucky to have him here for the time that we have. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce Thomas and get straight into it. So if you're looking for an Aggie that bleeds maroon, you don't have to search for long. Thomas Grieve is Texas A&M's newest senior yell leader for the upcoming 2023-24 school year, and he is an embodiment of what it means to be a good Ag. Thomas is motivated, passionate, and ever filled with spirit, and his role as one of Texas A&M's prestigious yell leaders reflects that. Although widely known for being a yell leader, Thomas's role within the broader TAMU community cannot be understated. Thomas is also a member of the Texas A&M Corps of Cadets and SQ3, as well as volunteering himself to chaperone tons of wide-eyed, confused incoming freshmen as a former fish camp counselor. Outside of his important school duties, Thomas is an avid outdoorsman who values the purity of a good hike through Mother Nature and enjoys traveling the country and the world. Without further ado, I'm happy to finally introduce Texas A&M senior yell leader, Thomas Grieve. Hey, man, welcome to the podcast. It's like I said before, it's great to finally get you down and be talking to you here. Just kind of how you doing, man?
Yeah, howdy. I'm doing good. I'm excited to be here. This is the first podcast I've ever been on, so I'm excited for this. It's still weird just thinking like, two college kids doing stuff like this, but here we are. Yeah, I'm pumped.
Yeah. Well, so I mean, the reason why this kind of like took a little while to do is I know like your summer schedule is pretty busy, but just this past week or so, I mean, fish camps. Just kind of preface this, at Texas A&M, incoming freshmen have an opportunity to sign up for this camp called Fish Camp. It's an opportunity for freshmen to immerse themselves in the traditions and the culture and just kind of the spirit of Texas A&M. They go out to a camp called Lakeview and they spend, I think it's 3 days, 2 nights at this like summer camp-esque area. And they just kind of do chants, learn the traditions of A&M, and they come in kind of a little bit more well prepared for the entire A&M scene. And part of the yell leader's role is to go there and for you guys aren't there the whole time, but you guys do a little bit. So tell me about what you've been kind of doing over there at Lakeview. And yeah.
Yeah, no, well, first, I'm glad you touched on Fish Camp a little bit and kind of give it some context, because I can't tell you the amount of times we like tell people, like high school prospective students, we're like, sign up for Fish Camp. They always give us this look and we have to tell them, okay, yeah, it has nothing to do with fishing. It has nothing to do with fishing at all. That's just what we call freshmen or fish. So thank you for touching on that, number one. But yeah, so what we do there is we arrive the first night and the freshmen don't know. And so they've met us already at their new student conference. Excuse me. And so they've seen kind of like, they kind of get the vibe of the yell leader and kind of understand a little bit like we do spirit stuff. We wear a very unique uniform, kind of a public presence. So they kind of get that sense. But fish camps where they get to feel the energy, and that's really special. So we teach them the rest of the yells. We teach them the first half at their new student conference. We teach them the second half at fish camp. We tell some jokes. We kind of explain some common misconceptions about yell and about the spirit and all that kind of stuff. And then we end with the yell practice. So it's a lot of fun. And next to Midnight Yell, Fish Camp is my favorite thing that we do as yell leaders. I absolutely love it.
Yeah. And you were, I think, was it? I might be mistaken, but there was a Camp Grieve
Yes.
this year. Is that? Are you related to that, or
yes,
is that your dad?
Yes, that was my dad. So that was actually, I was just there 2 days ago. So he was a namesake. So there was a camp named after him. Every
That's cool.
camp has out of the 48 camps. And yeah, he was a namesake for session B. He was Lime Camp Grieve. So basically namesakes just are kind of like sponsors, and you become a namesake, you have to get nominated. And then they pick the nominations based off of people who have given back to the university. So my dad was class of 91. He was the first in his family of all T-SIPs. So the whole family was birthed. Yes, I know. Until my dad, every single person, for the most part, came from So he made the shift for sure. And then while he was here, he was a fish camp counselor for 2 years. And then he was a chair of a camp. So he ran a camp for a year. And so fast forward, I was a counselor 2 years ago. And then as a fish, my camp was on Zoom. And
Oh,
yep, that was my year. And I wouldn't have done that Zoom camp if it hadn't have been for my dad, because I was like, this sounds really lame. Um, but he was like, no, like it's on Zoom, it's not gonna be the same, but you need to go. And so I did, and it was as good as it could have been, but it definitely allowed me to come into college having an established a group of people, a support system. So that was great. And then that inspired me to become a counselor, and I loved it. Like I tell people, being a yell leader is the coolest thing I've done at A&M, but being a fish camp counselor is the most fun thing I've done at A&M, like by far. And so um, by the end of it, I had loved it so much, and I was just kind of reflecting on it, and I was like, I would not be here had it not been for my dad. And so I thought, I want to give, I want to find a way to give back, and so to him. And so that's when I started thinking about how can I get him to maybe be a namesake. And so it took 2 years, but got him nominated. And then he was selected this past winter. They selected him to be a namesake. And then just to add to that, my partner, my DG partner, so the person who I was, her name is Caitlin. And so like the way they break it up is like there's different camps, and then within each camp there's different discussion groups, DGs, and those are the groups that are responsible for the freshmen. And so my partner from 2 years ago ended up becoming the chair of one of the co-chairs of my dad's camp. And so it was super full circle. She and her partner Nick absolutely made it wonderful, and we ended up winning the yell off, which is like this big competition
that's
at
huge.
yeah. And so it was just all around a really, really unique and cool experience.
That's awesome. Well, kind of like segueing on that, one of my questions kind of like was about your background, and I think something that some of the Yell leaders talk about, when they're introducing themselves is either, oh, like I come from a line of Aggies and this was like my goal, I was destined to be a Yell leader, or like I'm a first time Aggie and then I kind of waddled into this role. So talk to me a little bit about your background. Where are you from? How did your dad kind of make that shift to go? I mean, that's a very kind of that's
Yeah.
like a big step in a different direction to go to A&M from a line of TSIPs. So talk to me a little bit about your background, where you're from, how you grew up.
Sure. Yeah. Well, certainly did not come to A&M thinking I'd ever be a yell leader. That was yeah, no, I was not the case. So I'll start with my dad. I already touched on that a little bit because he's a central part of my Aggie story. So yeah, up until him, it was all T-SIPs. My granddad, my grandma, all the uncles, my dad's older brother, everybody. And then my dad decided he had a dream that he wanted to become an astronaut, and the best way to do that was to become a naval pilot. And so he applied to the Naval Academy in high school. He was, long story short, he was the runner up to go. So he would have been, out of his congressional district, he would have been number two to go. So he said, okay, I didn't get into the Naval Academy. What's the second best option? And he was like, okay, I'll just go to A&M and join the Corps. Came to A&M, joined the Corps. That's how his story was to get here. But his path changed very drastically. By the middle of his first semester, he was failing. I'm pretty sure he was failing every single class. He was in engineering.
Wow.
And rude awakening. And so he basically had to decide between, do I just stay in the Corps, or do I and risk failing out of the university, or do I get out of the Corps, improve my grades? And so he ultimately chose, he got out of the Corps, switched his major twice, ended up graduating with a microbiology degree, and is now a practicing gynecologist. So he's a doctor. It's a path very, very, his path changed. Yeah. But extremely, extremely thankful for A&M. But growing up, when I was growing up, I did not come up from a family that was like, has all the, maroon walls and like has the A&M game on every Saturday. My dad was like, look, I grew up in a family where there was a ton of pressure to go to TU, And he hated that. He hated that kind of pressure. And, there were people in his family who were like genuinely offended when they found out he was coming to A&M. And so he said, I'm not going to pressure my kids at all. And so you can actually go, there's pictures of me as a kid and I'm wearing burnt orange shirts. Like I was at Texas football games. Like, yeah, no, A&M was not put on me at all. And so for me, it started when I was in high school and I told my dad that I wanted to join the military. And he said, okay, if that's the case, then you need to come see the Corps. And so my first time to A&M was November of my freshman year of high school.
Wow, that's early.
Yeah, yes. So he took me, him and his old roommate, who's my godfather. And they were also, the two of them were fish camp partners also. They drove down the three of us went to the A&M LSU game. My freshman year of high school, let me think, that would have been fall of 2016. And that game we had nosebleed seats. It was raining. It was cold. The Ags ran out of time. It was like not a good recruiting day for A&M. But I got to see the Corps march in. I got to see the band. I learned what yell leaders were that day. And I was like, this place is awesome. And you could just feel like the community, like everything my dad had talked about, I was like feeling for the first time. And so fast forward, by the end of my senior year, it was between the Air Force Academy and Texas A&M for me. And I did not get into the Air Force Academy, which looking back, very thankful I did not, because I think A&M is a much better fit for me. And so I came to A&M. And joined the Corps because I want to join the Air Force. I want to fly. And so I'm on contract with them right now. Hope I'm pursuing a pilot slot. That's the goal. That's why I joined the Corps, and the Corps is ultimately what brought me to A&M.
What influenced you? Because like freshman year, you're 13, 14 years old. That's a big decision to make, to kind of know the track you want to go down. What influenced you to go down that military track that early on?
Yeah, for sure. So it was never like at that early on, it was not set in stone. Like there were moments where I was like, do I want to do this? Like, this sounds insane. And what it really came down to was I have multiple family members that have served in the military, most of them in the Air Force. And I've heard their stories. I've heard the opportunities it gave them. And so that was a huge factor. But also, I would say for me, I've always wanted to do something more in life than just make money. And like that was just like yeah, everybody wants money, sure, but to have that be my ultimate goal in life has never really been satisfying, I guess. And so there's a greater purpose in that service aspect of joining the military that's always appealed to me.
Cool. So let's talk a little bit about yell leader, right? So you were a junior yell leader last year, which means you were voted in towards the end of your sophomore year. What made Thomas Grieve throw his name in the hat? Why did you decide to become a yell leader?
So I actually already knew what yell leaders were, but I'd never seen them until that game. So just to give you an idea of how little I knew about A&M before I came that first time, I was I was in middle school, and my family we were watching an Aggie football game, and I didn't really care about college football in middle school. That was not a big thing. And my uncle, he's a T-SIP, and he thought it would be funny he played a joke on me, and he basically asked me, he said, hey, have you seen how pretty the girls on the A&M cheerleader? And me trying to be in middle school, I was like, oh yeah, like I was just trying to play it off. I was like, oh
they're
yeah,
beautiful.
those girls are so cute. And he just starts busting out laughing. And I had no idea why. And then I find out. So that was how I learned what yell leaders were. Again, did not ever think end up being one. And so, yeah, fast forward. That game happens, and when I'm in high school, and I see them, and I see the impact they're having on this crowd, and how I'm like, how are five people controlling a stadium that fits over 100,000 people? That is incredible, but back then, I looked at it, I was like, yeah, if I'm here, I could do that. That'd be awesome. But it's the same way a kid thinks about being like a rock star or an astronaut. It's like way up here. So did I ever think it was realistic? No. But fast forward, and now I'm a fish in the Corps. It's my freshman year, and one of my upperclassmen, Kip, he was in my outfit. He was in Squadron 3 with me. I watched him when I was a freshman go through the process and get elected and become a junior yell leader. And I really just, by the end of that year, I thought, if Kip can do it, like I can do this. Like that's when it became realistic. And so I talked a lot with him, got some good mentorship. And that next summer was my fish camp summer. And again, I got to see Kip at, performing at Lakeview with all those freshmen there. And you really see the impact that yell leaders have on people. Like, it is just incredible what a simple howdy from anybody, but especially, a yell leader can do for somebody. And I was like, I want to be able to provide that to people. So
Cool.
long story short.
How does it work? Because I know, like, there's some people, like I have some friends who have ran for yell leader. They're not in the Corps. Obviously they did not get elected. How do you get your name on the Five for Yell ballot? Because I'm sure there's more than just 5 corpsmen who apply. So how do you get on the Five for Yell? And has anybody ever, been considered that wasn't on the Five for Yell ballot?
Yes. So a lot of people don't know this, but the yell leaders have been around 1907. Out of all the yell leaders, there have been over 30 that were not in the Corps.
Wow.
Yes. And so part of that is that in its history, around when the non-reg students, when the people who weren't in the Corps started first coming to A&M, there was actually a mandate for about, if I remember correctly, it's a period of 10 years where there had to be at least one yell leader who was not in the Corps to represent those students. And so a good majority comes from there. But there have been times where a student who is not in the Corps since then, we don't have that mandate anymore, has been elected by the student body. But in those cases, with the exception of one group of yell leaders, when that happens, it's always 4 Corps guys and 1 non-reg guy. So, but backing up, so with Five for Yell, the way it works, there are more than 5 people in the Corps that, yeah. And so the way it works is, in the fall, we have a process called Corps Block, and it's open to every junior and sophomore in the Corps. So, sophomores interested in junior yell and juniors interested in senior yell. We get roughly 200 sophomores that come out and roughly 50 juniors that come out. And it's a month-long process. And by the end of it, 2 of those sophomores will be selected and 1 of those juniors will be selected. And so the process includes 2 weeks of social events, and some speeches, peer voting. There's multiple rounds of peer voting, and then ultimately an interview with the finalist candidates. And after that interview, the current junior yell leaders select the 3 individuals that they want on their campaign team. And so, yeah, again, that would have been the fall of my sophomore year. At this point, I decided I was going to go for it. I showed up. There were literally hundreds of people that looked and talked exactly like I did. And I really did not think I was going to get it. But I was like, I'm going to just give it what I got. And here I am.
It's like you won the yell leader Hunger Games. It's like,
yeah, I mean, 1 out of 2 people out of 200 are picked. So every person has a 1% chance.
That's unbelievable. And you
And then
must
you
have had one hell of a campaign slogan.
well, yeah, and then you have to. Well, that's the thing is you go through all that, and then you haven't even been elected yet. You just got on the team. You
Right.
know, real work hasn't even started at that point. So it's a crazy process for sure.
Yeah. So fast forward a little bit, you're now a junior yell leader. You get announced probably towards the end of your sophomore year, right? Like just in time to maybe be in attendance for the spring game. I think that's what happened this past year.
Mhm.
So tell me about your first official showing as a yell leader. What's going through your head? I
Yeah,
mean, you're like towards the end of the year, you might have like your first official showing, but like you're in this new position. You're put up on this kind of pedestal. You got to be like the perfect Aggie. And what's going through your head?
yeah. So the way we were thrown into it, and it's been done like this traditionally, at least for the past couple of years. Actually, with the exception of this year. This year the scheduling wasn't this, but up until my that yeah, I still would have been a sophomore. Up until my sophomore year, is traditionally done this way. The junior yell leaders, their first event is pull-out day, which for those of you who are not aware what pulling out is, that is a tradition at A&M that is not what is colloquially known as. That's when upperclassmen does a tradition that only upperclassmen are supposed to do. So at pullout day, that's the sophomore class tradition where they whoop early, and so the at that point the newly elected junior yell leaders come, and it's just those two that lead it. And so my first event is literally I'm by myself with Trevor. The seniors aren't there, and so literally it's there's no one that's experienced doing this. Our first event is we are totally on our own. So I'm literally shitting my pants, like just scared out of my mind, because we got, gosh, if I remember correctly, we had at least, I want to say at least 3,000 people there.
Oh my
Um,
God.
yeah, I think I might be. I blur that between that and big event because big event was the next day. Um, but it was enough people to be intimidating for sure. Um, and so for this event, we get up on stage. Well, we take pictures first, and then we get up on stage, give a little speech about we're finally upperclassmen, we're almost there, almost halfway done, and then we lead a yell practice. So we had practiced a little bit beforehand. Like as soon as you get elected, the next step is teaching the new guys how to do yells, and then after that, it's getting on stage and you just do it. So yeah, I was nervous, but we got through it. It was fun.
Okay. And so this is a question that I kind of put out some stuff to just on the Instagram page, see if anyone had any questions for you. So somebody wanted to know, have you ever felt embarrassed? Has there ever been a moment where you're wearing your like you said, your unique kind of uniform in front of hundreds of thousands of people, both on TV and live, where you kind of went like, "Ooh, like this is like, I'm a little bit, this is a little embarrassing, but I'm just gonna I'm gonna do it."
So I would not say I don't think I've ever been embarrassed because I take a lot of pride, and we all do, not just me, but we all take a lot of pride in the uniform we wear and the opportunity we have just because of what it means to people. Like to Aggies, that means a lot. And anytime that you're talking about the spirit of Aggie land or the traditions to Aggies, it means a lot. So to be able to represent that, we take great pride in that. But I will say there have been a lot of times where I've been frustrated because we're in environments where people don't understand what we represent. They just see a bunch of weird looking guys wearing overalls, or people dressed up and we look like janitors, and we're waving our arms around. They just don't understand. So it can be frustrating when we know what it means and we know there are people out there that know what it means, but the crowd that we're in front of immediately just does not get it, or they just don't care.
So is that like what you're talking about? I know when the men's basketball team goes away to like the SEC tournament or the NCAA tournament, you guys travel with them. Is that kind of the environment, the crowd that you're talking about? What's the scenario that this happens for you?
Yeah, so when it comes to yeah, so when that happens, it's traveling, but it does not happen every time we travel. There are certainly people who are not from A&M, that know what the Yell leaders are and can respect the tradition. But yes, I would say the times that it's happened the most is typically other SEC schools, with the exception of Auburn. Auburn, they are awesome. We love Auburn. Great, great student life there. But when we've traveled to places like South Carolina, or whenever we're dealing with Arkansas, those are the people that they either just don't understand or don't care, or they just want to go out of their way to harass us. So traveling is a very up in the air kind of experience. Sometimes it's really great. It's a lot of fun. People are respectful. They host us. They have great hospitality. But then you have the moments where you're literally in South Carolina, and I was just this I remember vividly. I was just on the street the night before the game, and we were just going to dinner, and I happened to be wearing an A&M hoodie. Nothing to do with Yell. It was just an A&M hoodie. Like I could have been anybody. And a group of people came up and pointed at the hoodie, and they're like, "Oh, you go to A&M?" And I was like, "Yeah." And they literally just flip us off and go, like it's just like, okay, welcome to South Carolina. Yeah, very up in the air.
Yeah. Wow. So yeah, that's ridiculous. I mean, I play for the club ice hockey team, not a big deal. But like when we've been in some environments where, obviously like kind of like you, where we're just wearing our A&M gear, and especially when we play the T-Sips in Austin.
Yeah.
Holy hell. I mean, I can't say to the extent that I know everything that you've experienced, but oh my goodness, I've heard some gnarly things come my way.
Yeah.
It's just like there's just like some sort of, we strike some sort of fear into the hearts of other people for them to feel that type of way to say those things to us. But
Yeah,
I take it as a certain sense of pride in my school, and that we're able to affect them that way just because of our we're a little higher on the stool.
Yeah, well, it's because we're proud of who we are, and we're proud that we're different than other people. That's what they call us a cult for a reason. It's because they don't understand us, and they don't get it, and they're afraid of what they don't understand. If you really break it down, like specifically with SEC schools, a lot of them, they're not really that different. They have big lights in their football stadium. They play loud music, and their fans like to get drunk. I'm not saying that's every school, but a lot of them are. That's not how A&M is. We have unique traditions. We have, we have yells. We don't have cheerleaders. We have the 12th man. The list goes on and on and on and on. And people are proud of that. And the other schools, they can't comprehend it. They cannot comprehend it.
Yeah. So you were talking a little bit about when you travel. So when you go to those schools like South Carolina, do you travel with the football team to all their away games? And then also same with like basketball, like what's kind of the itinerary with your travel schedule with the various Division I teams?
Sure. Yeah. So we go to all the away football games, but we don't travel with the football team. We actually go before they do, because we do away midnight yell practices at every away football game we have. Cool. So on Thursday evenings, we fly by ourselves. We fly, we don't have a private jet or anything. That's a common misconception. Fly like everybody else does, but we're not traveling with the band or anything. And so then we go out early. We're there the whole day Friday. Then that Friday night, we find a venue. We hold a yell practice, and all the Aggies who are in the area or who are coming to the game will attend. And those vary in sizes depending on the location. And then we will travel back typically with the band after the game. But then with the other sports, basketball would be the team we travel with the second most. We typically will go to one neutral game for both the men and women's team. And then any tournaments, SEC tournament or NCAA, we'll travel with them for that. But we do not go to most of their away games. That would be
crazy. Impossible. Yeah. Well, I mean, you talked about, leading these midnight yell practices at these away games. It's actually, like I just finished my freshman year. So I kind of just got my eyes open to the entire, spirit of Aggieland. And, one thing that really opened my eyes, we went to Colorado in January to play some series against some of the Colorado teams. The Denver Aggie moms had lunch set up for us all 4 days that we were there, completely dime free. I mean, they catered Olive Garden in for us. We got to talk with them. We traveled an hour and a half outside of Denver to a small town called Greeley, Colorado. It's a farm town. As soon as you enter, like the city limits, you know it's a farm town. There's an aroma of farm.
Yeah.
And I mean, I would say it was 50-50 in the stands, Aggies versus Bears fans. I mean, we had, like the amount of support we had in this small town in Colorado was unbelievable. And I mean, I think it's cool. I mean, I didn't know that you guys traveled early to do those yell practices, but I'm not surprised because based off just my personal experience, there's Aggies everywhere in the entire world. And it's special. It's cool to see that. I mean, how big are some of these yell practices? What are the areas where you see the most people come out?
Yeah. So yeah, it totally varies. So when we do the neutral site game against Arkansas at Cowboy Stadium, we will hold the yell practice in the Stockyards in Fort Worth. And if I remember correctly, I believe that yell practice had 10,000 people. Now that's our largest by far,
Yeah.
DFW is not that far away from College Station. But then you go out to, was it Auburn? I think, yeah, Auburn. We held a yell practice in a bar the night before, and we had maybe like 50 people. So it totally varies. Mississippi State, I want to say we had a couple hundred. Yeah, so it depends, but there are Aggies everywhere, dude, and they will treat you well, and especially the Aggie moms. Aggie moms, they're
unbelievable. They outdo themselves. I mean, I have so much respect and love for that whole organization. They do so much for just everybody within the Aggie network. It's pretty cool.
Absolutely.
So becoming a yell leader, you're essentially getting thrown into public figuredom. You're now a person known by everybody at the university, essentially, right? I mean, if someone doesn't know the yell leaders, they don't have Instagram. They're, I don't know what they're doing. And probably the alumni too. They're following it. They probably know who you are. Talk about public speaking a little bit. I mean, going into becoming a yell leader, how comfortable were you with that? And how has that kind of grown for you over time with various public appearances?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So personally, public speaking, that wasn't too challenging for me because I came in to yell with some history of public speaking from high school, just some opportunities I had. But there's a difference between, the opportunities I had in high school versus you're at a midnight yell with 40,000 people. So it certainly was, a shock and a change. But what's nice is you are forced to work that out before you're even elected. So going back to that core block process, in that kind of tryout session, there's times where you have to speak in front of your peers. You have to say, you have to introduce yourself. You tell them why you're running. You're put on the spot. Your interview, you're put on the spot. And so, you got to come in prepared. And so I kind of had a sense of that. Just I was kind of like, I imagine they're going to want to pick someone who they're confident can speak publicly. And so, I had practiced those things on my own. And then coming in, once you're selected for core block, okay, now you're going out and campaigning. So again, before you're even elected, you are going out to sororities and fraternities and different orgs and, all these different places where you're averaging hundreds to thousands of people that you're speaking to at one time right there. And so, the older yell leaders, they helped us write our speeches. They practiced and we rehearsed over and over and over and over. And so by the time you get elected, you're squared away. You know what you're doing. And now it's just getting reps in over and over and over.
So I kind of want to hear about your weekly schedule. I mean, you talked about you're going to leave sometimes on Thursdays to get ahead to an away game for the football team. How are you managing school and yell leader and sports and, having leisure time? How does it all work? What does a day-to-day, week-to-week schedule look like for you?
Yeah, so this is one of the questions you'd sent me ahead of time, and I read this one and I started laughing because to answer your question, it is different from week to week. Like there is no week that is the same as another. And so, and that is ultimately how you balance it, is that at every single week you have to look at every second of time that's available and you have to break it down. So every Sunday I take I have all sorts of ways I manage the day. I've got my calendar, which has everything for the semester, and then I've got my in my notes app, I break down each day. So whereas the calendar has all the events, my notes app has like every second of every event, and then I have my reminders, which are like alert me to do things that I haven't planned in yet. So constant time management, constant planning ahead, and then every week just reevaluating and be like, okay, what does this week look like? Okay, here's my events. Here's what I have to do to prepare for the events. Here's what free time I have. Okay, what do I need to do in that free time? Is it homework? Is it core stuff? Is it blah 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 blah? And then when you miss something or when something runs late or whatever, just taking leaving time in there to recover from that. So constant time management.
Yeah. I mean, I play a club sport and do engineering, and I feel like I'm drowning sometimes. I mean,
Oh
you're
yeah. I'm
yeah,
a fly, so by no means am I an engineer. I
yeah,
could I don't know how engineering people who are yell leaders or core I don't know how any of them have ever done it. I
yeah.
could not.
It's just it feels impossible at times. Um, so I want to hear about like something that an interesting thing that may have happened behind the scenes as a yell leader, or maybe at a game. But just something that being a yell leader has kind of like a perk of being a yell leader. One of the cool things that being a yell leader has afforded you. Whether that be, the clout of being a yell leader getting you into a situation you might not have rather been in, or just something like that.
Yeah, so I think some of the things that it's provided me that I would not have had otherwise, and like as cliche of an answer as it is, but it really has given me the opportunity to form relationships that I never would have formed. So for example, my best friend is Trevor, and but we did not know each other before Yale. Um, we actually didn't even meet until the day, like I think we were both interview finalists for Core Block, and we met I think the day before our interview. And so part of that is you spend 3 weeks socializing with people, and I met hundreds of other people he and I never met. And since then we've the amount of time you spend together is just ridiculous. And I know probably more about that guy than anybody other than his parents and his girlfriend know. And you really just have the opportunity to form really deep and impactful relationships with people, especially the group that's around you. Because I mean, all five of us are here in White Creek. The three seniors, we live together in an apartment. The two juniors, they live next door. We travel. I mean, I don't in the summers we don't spend more than I say we average no more than 3 to 4 days in one city at a time. We're traveling all the time, all over. And you get to do really, really cool things with these people. And so, I mean, I have never formed as deep of a relationship with people that as I have with the people in Yale.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Relationships are probably the most valuable thing in life, I think.
No,
Um,
for sure.
yeah. What has been your favorite moment? I know you got a full year ahead of you, but in your junior yell leader year, what was your favorite moment as a yell leader?
I cannot narrow that down to one moment. So I wrote down a few,
Awesome.
and yeah, I kind of broke them up into three categories. So the first moment was getting elected as a yell leader, and there's a video I have of not me or not any of the guys, but there's a video of my parents and my sister in the crowd, and someone was filming their reaction for when my name was going to be called, and I have this on my Instagram. Um, it's on the post about when I got elected, and I must have watched this video for over and over and over and over and over again for at least half an hour to an hour, and what it is it's just, you can hear my name amongst the other guys' names being called, and you just see my parents and my family just elated and just, completely, you can just see the pride in their face. And that meant the world to be able to, you know, give my family that, and to, give them the opportunity to be proud of their son and their brother, and to, to put my family name on something that's as special as this is. So to be able to provide that for them, number one, I'll remember that moment for the rest of my life. Second category, in terms of sports, we get really cool opportunities to be in some really cool situations with sports. The big football wins this past season, even though there weren't too many, but the ones I'll never forget the Arkansas game when they kicked that extra point and it bounced off of the field goal in Cowboy Stadium. And I'm standing there on the field like, we're about to lose this game. We're about to lose this game. And then you can literally, the stadium goes silent and you can hear the football just doink right off of the goalpost. And oh my gosh, we erupted. I actually thought my heart was going to stop with how the amount of adrenaline that I don't think I've ever experienced, the amount of adrenaline going through my body, and just, you're so exhausted at that point, but that was just so cool to see. But then also, like, while that was probably the like biggest win of that season, minus I guess LSU, my favorite sporting moment was the UMass game, because it was miserable. It was 30 degrees and raining, if you remember that. But the reason this is my favorite game is because a lot of people left in it because it was just miserable. It was a game against a team that was, not to our level. There was not a competitive game. It had been a bad season for us, and yet the people who stayed made that game so memorable, because here I am, because we're wearing it's 30 degrees and raining, and we're in a short sleeve shirt and soaking wet, and we've been this way for hours, but there's still thousands of people there in the crowd staying the whole time, yelling loud. And that just summed up the 12th man for me. And I was like, these are Aggies. These people right here, these are Aggies. And so to be able to witness that and to be able to lead them was very memorable. And then the last moment, was last week, being on stage in front of my dad's fish camp and seeing that come to life. I mean, again, that was a dream that I had envisioned for 2 years, and then, ultimately being on stage for that and being able to shout my dad out and, give some pride to his camp, and to see one of my best friends, Caitlin, she, like, I had the dream for that camp, but that was her camp. She ran that thing and worked so hard, and to just see her dream come out through that as well was just an incredible opportunity. So, and there's so many more. Those are just the ones I could talk about that forever, dude. It was awesome.
That's cool. And so that, I mean, I feel like you kind of answered this question too. I mean, the best fan environment, but is there one that's different from like UMass or the Arkansas game, where you were just like mesmerized by the power of Aggieland?
Oh yeah. Other than those, I mean, the thing that comes to mind was before I was a Yale leader, and it was when I was a sophomore in the Corps, and we beat Bama. The 12th man impacted Nick Saban and his team. Like, undoubtedly, there's like the 12th man had an effect. The quarterback couldn't hear. He was getting sacked over and over and over again. The whole stadium was shaking. Players couldn't hear what the coaches were saying. I mean, the 12th man has that effect on people. And I remember, and I recognize that, like, as just a guy in the stands. But what was really cool, though, was how loud and how crazy it was. But then the moment that field goal was about to be kicked to win the game, you could hear a pin drop in that stadium. Complete silence. And that again shows you that it's not chaos. Like the 12th man is led, it is student led, that is a controlled environment. And to be a yell leader and to be one of the people that gets to lead that crowd and lead that kind of effect on other teams is just an incredible opportunity.
And to kind of just like cap off my questions to you about specifically just yell leading, what's your favorite yell to lead? I feel like I know the answer to this question, but tell me what it is on the record.
Hear what you think first. I want to see if
I think if I was a yell leader and I was down there, I could feed off the energy, and I feel like there's always the most energy with the beat the hell out of whoever chant yell.
Yeah. So that's a lot of people's favorite yell. That is actually not my favorite.
Okay.
That's up there. That one's awesome. Doing that one's awesome. But I would say locomotive is my favorite because with all the other yells, for the most part, it's like you're saying different things, but you're yelling the whole time. And it's just like in your face, in your face, in your face. But with locomotive, it starts off like super slow. It's like, it's raw. And when you have 110,000 people in Kyle Field saying that at once, that pause is intimidating, and then it speeds up and speeds up and speeds up. And so, that's definitely my favorite one.
Cool. This one's just I just came up with this on the spot. So like in January, this past year, I reached out to Trevor, about having some of the yell leaders come out to our hockey game against Texas, at home in College Station. And I mean, I was shocked that we were actually able to get you guys, because our game was on the same night as a basketball game. Mm-hmm. And it was a shot in the dark. I mean, I filled out that piece of paper, or I filled out the online form. I was like, I mean, I'd like to have you guys come out. What can we, like, are you going to be feeding them? No, we're not going to be feeding them. I was like, we're losing all the points here. It's, it starts at 10 or whatever. But you guys came, and it was you and Trevor. You guys came to the game. I kind of want to ask you about that experience for you. I mean, I don't know how often you guys are tapped into like club sports, because I know you guys have, the Division I sports come first. So how was that experience for you?
Dude, no, I loved it. So it's funny because before you had requested us, we were already talking about it. And I was specifically like trying to convince the other guys. Trevor and I both were like, look, this TU game is coming. Like, why would we not be there? Like, it's TU, we have to be there. And so it took a lot of convincing because we did have basketball, like that's our duty to be there. But eventually Zach, the head yell leader at the time, once the request came in on top of us already talking about it, it was like, okay, like this could be big. And so that they decided that the 3 seniors were going to stay and the 2 juniors were going to go. And so we went, and it was awesome. Like, I loved every second of that. That was so cool. I'd never even been in the ice rink before. And I loved how close we were to the crowd. I loved being like right there next to them and being able to interact with them, and because you can actually like talk to them there. Yeah. It's some like sometimes it's hard. Like football, it's impossible to talk. There's just so much distance, but that was really cool. Seeing y'all was really cool. Beating the hell out of TU is always really cool. And I had thought that we were the first yell leaders to do that. I thought, this is a new step for yell. And then I come to find out that before COVID, it had been done before.
Really?
And yes. And so I think the last time before we came was 2019, 2020 or 2019. Carson Lowe was the head yell leader at the time. And he was telling us that he was like, we went, and it was to the TU game also, which gave me encouragement that like, okay, this is something we can continue to do and do in the future, because we yes, we're super busy as yell leaders, but we are trying to expand. As A&M grows, our program has to grow. And like you said, in terms of other club sports, y'all are definitely the most interaction we've had with club, because D1 does come first. And right. Where we're trying to expand right now is that we don't even cover all of the D1 sports. I mean, we do soccer, we do volleyball, men and women's basketball, and football. And like in terms of consistently, that's it. We occasionally have done things with equestrian. I think we went to the swim SEC tournament last year. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So we're trying right now to expand into some of the more spring sports. So we're already talking with softball, hoping to be able to go out to some of their games. Track and field has invited us to the opening of their new indoor track. And so that's the area we're currently focusing on. But we are always open to ideas. We're always open to expansion, and we're, ultimately, like, it's our job to spread the spirit, and, to be able to do that in y'all's arena, the ice rink was really, really cool.
Yeah. No, like just like as a player perspective, being on the bench, being on like the other side of it, it's like when I go to sporting events, I'm chanting, I'm yelling, I'm in the crowd, and I'm feeling all of that. It's so different when you're actually like a player. And I know like our arena, it's no Reed, it's no Kyle. Like we fit like 2,000 people in there, if even that many. But it's like you feel something, you really get energized, and with you guys there, I mean, it was just an elevation of that, and that was cool. And funny enough, at some of our other games, there's guys, they're not in like yell leader uniforms, but they have like their overalls on, and they got like their like horns sawed off, and they'll lead yells. And so we have like our fake yell leaders sometimes, but when you guys were there, I mean, that was just surreal experience for me, because playing youth hockey, I have my mom and my dad in the stands, and everyone else does too. And so when you have a crowd and they're all rallying around you, I appreciate you guys coming out and making the time for it. And I hope it can be something we can build on down the line. It'd be cool to have you guys come out again this year.
Dude, yeah, we'd love to. We would absolutely love to. And I appreciate you saying that, because that is the kind of validation that says, like, okay, what we do makes a difference. Like, the fact that a player is telling me, okay, I was able to have more energy going into my game or my match because I felt, the crowd's energy, that says everything to us. That's like, okay, then yes, it's worth doing what we're doing. It does make a difference. And so, yeah, no, we absolutely would love to continue that. Send me the date for the next TU game, and I'll talk to Trevor, and we will make something work.
Awesome. I mean, I'll get on that as soon as we get off this call. So I mean that's basically most of the questions I've had for you. I kind of wanted to just ask you one more question. What are you doing after college? You got one more year. You get to bask in the glory of being a senior yell leader, and then like you said, you're contracted to the Air Force. So what's kind of the plan for the next little bit for you?
Yeah, so I'm actually doing a 3+2 program. So this is my last year of Yale, but not my last year at A&M. I'm getting my master's and my undergrad in philosophy when I graduate after my 5th year. And the goal is that by then I will have a pilot slot with the Air Force, and that I'll pursue that. So the way it works is you have to compete. Like, I'm contracted with the Air Force, so they're going to employ me, but now I have to compete for what job that I want. And so that's the process I'm going through now. I'm hoping by this spring to know if, I get a slot or not. And then, going forward, if I do get a slot, then that means I'll have a 10-year commitment to fly with the Air Force. And then we'll see where life takes me after that. I'll be in my 30s by then, mid 30s. So I cannot think that far ahead.
Yeah,
so,
I hear you. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me, man. Thank you for blocking out this time to join me. This is kind of like a breakthrough for me on this podcast. It's really small. I'm like, I just kind of do this because I like to talk to people and have them share their stories, and having somebody with your kind of clout come on and actually speak to me, and it's huge for me personally. So I really appreciate it. And again, thanks so much for coming on.
Yeah, Mason, it's been an absolute pleasure, man. Like, when you reached out to me, like, everybody always talks about like yell leader clout and celebrity or whatever, but I think what people forget is, like, I'm just a kid in college too.
Yeah.
And so someone's reaching out to me and saying, hey, do you want to be on a podcast? I'm like, yeah, I want to be. Like, that'd be dope. So I appreciate it just as much as you do. And, like, I'm really glad we got to make this work. It's been an absolute pleasure.
All right, man. Well, once again, thank you so much. And yeah, I hope everyone who got to listen to this got some informative stuff out of this and enjoyed this conversation, because I know I did. Thanks so much, Thomas, and have a good one.
Yes, sir, Mason. Take care.
All right. See you, man.
See ya.